Disappointment for the U.S. men's national team could breed opportunity going forward. There's a lot to break down, a lot to be disappointed about, and a lot, surprisingly, to be hopeful about. Sports fans, huddle up. In today's video, we're talking about the good news that came despite a heartbreaking and, let's just be totally honest, frankly, embarrassing exit from Copa America. If you're new here, I'm Nate, and we are talking the biggest news in sports every single day on this channel. Me, Ben, and Aaron all the time. So get subbed up to make sure you don't miss out on all of the action. The good news, despite an embarrassing exit, we're going to talk about the embarrassing loss or exit from Copa America, but the USSF has announced a comprehensive review of the team's performance in Copa America, and the result of that will be hugely beneficial for the U.S. going forward, especially if we hire an amazing and available coach we're going to be talking about later in the video. I'll tell you why in 5 seconds, but first, comment below, what is the most pressing issue for the U.S. men's national team that needs to be solved right now? Between now and 2026, the 2026 World Cup, what is the most pressing issue for you? Comment it below. I'll be honest with you, I think the most pressing issue is what we're talking about today. It's a coaching problem. It's 100% a coaching problem. But I suppose you could also say it's personnel. You could also say it's a system, or perhaps my favorite answer, it's a culture issue, which I think is a coaching problem wrapped up. But it's a culture issue, and we're going to talk about that as well today. As a coach, I've always thought of playing culture as a larger circle item that the system falls into. Your playing culture determines a lot more about how you play than just your system. There are 100 different ways to play 4-4-2, right? And there are 100 different ways to play 4-4-2 diamond. You can pick a very specific system, but that system by itself, that structure is not enough. You need more about how you're going about it, okay? For example, Spain. Look at Spain. Several times now over the last few decades have reinvented themselves into new forms, but there's something about the way they play that feels like Spanish football. And then in the Euros last time around, it felt different for the first time in a really long time because it wasn't very tiki-taka. It was much more fast-paced, very different in that sense, more vertical for sure, but it felt like Spain. When they played, you felt like everybody on the pitch knew their role, knew what they were doing and where they were going and how they were going about it. And it's a culture issue. It's a culture issue what you do in off-the-ball movement. It's a culture issue what you do when you take your first touch. Those are things that it doesn't matter what formation you set up in, the actual flow of the game is determined by your culture. Germany did it several times over the last multiple decades. The best decades of Italy, same way. Even the best seasons or chunks of time for the United States have been the same as well. The team was cohesive, and it is the hardest part. It's the hardest part by a mile of international soccer, because you have to go from, you have to get all these guys who play on different teams regularly in all these different systems in different countries, and they come together and they have to be one cohesive unit. And countries like Spain, who have such a culture of football growing up from age 0 up, that culture does help a lot. Like when you, remember 2014, I want to say? 2014, that would make it the 2014 World Cup, 2013, what's the cup? Confederations Cup? What's that cup that's the year before? Oh, no, I'm blanking on it. Whatever the case is. You could see the way that Spain was playing in 2014, having half of the team members from Barcelona, half of the team members from Real Madrid, and I guess a small chunk of each of those halves going to Atletico Madrid. And you have all of these players who are playing together regularly. They know each other really well. It just makes sense, right? And we're never going to have that in the United States unless MLS becomes something it's destined probably to never become, because our best athletes probably don't play soccer, most of them. So all that being said, I'm getting out there. When you're coming in as an international team, you have to treat the United States of America similar to how small countries like Costa Rica treat their setup. You have to find a culture knowing that your guys are going to go play elsewhere and they're going to come back, right? Like Romania in the Euros right now. Your absolute best players, you're hoping they go play elsewhere. But at the end of the day, you have to have a culture of how you play soccer, how you play football, right? It's important. Anyway, the point is this. My biggest complaint about the U.S. men's national team over the last several runs has been nobody knows who we are. Honestly, dating back to like the South Africa World Cup in 2010. And even then, you could argue we still didn't really know who we were. It's very hard to identify in these modern teams in the last several, last decade for sure, what brand, what culture of soccer we're actually playing in America. And that's the frustrating part. And I think the problem with that stems from the coach. It's the coach's job to say, here's our culture. Here's our style of play. Here's what we're about. Here's what level of aggression. Here's where our discipline lies. Here's how much emotion we're bringing onto the pitch. Those decisions are important. And what I think is happening, if I'm totally honest with you, I'm thinking most of those questions I just asked, or most of those statements I just made, are not answered by Berhalter. I don't get the sense that we have a consistent level of emotion, discipline, intensity. We're all over the place. Sometimes we feel super intense and high-strung and our blood's flowing, and other times we feel really tight and in between where you want to be. You either want to be super disciplined and really structured and breakout play, or you want to be emotional and energetic and full vertical, fast flowing. Because if you get caught in between and you don't really know when we're turning it on and turning it off, you get what we have right now, where we have moments that we look amazing. We have moments, just small little moments where we think, oh, we're getting there. And the problem is we've been saying that for decades. We're getting there, we're getting there, we're getting there. And then guys are retiring out of soccer and we're like, why? We never got there. And I think it's because of that. I think we're caught in between finding what our actual culture is. And then you go with our coaching process over the course of the last decade and a half, and you've got an American coach, and then you've got Jurgen Klinsmann, you've got a European influence, wants to get European players on the pitch, and then some people would say didn't give him enough time. That's fine. I'm comfortable with that reality, actually, to be fair. I do think that's possible for sure. I think at the time I was leaning that way. I felt like he deserved one more go at it, but that's how these things work. You get 4 years if you're lucky, and that's it if you don't pull it off. And then back to an American coach. It's difficult for us because we need to find a coach that develops a true culture of what we are like when we play. If you watch the Italians play, no matter what version or formation or system of play they play, they still look like Italians. Even England, who have been really, really good on an individual level and struggled to be a solid, cohesive team, there are aspects of their physicality that look like you're watching the Premier League. You just watch, like, that looks like the Premier League. That's what it looks like. It looks like that style of play. And there's some issues in terms of how they convert that into their system. But it starts with the culture for me. Here's the good news, and I said it earlier, but this is USSF talking here. Our tournament performance fell short of our expectations. We must do better. We will be conducting a comprehensive review of our performance in Copa America and how best to improve the team and results as we look towards the 2026 World Cup. This sounds suspiciously similar to the process that was used for the U.S. women's national team when they bounced back from a horrible World Cup last year in the round of 16. Its earliest World Cup exit a few weeks later, then Andonovski resigned. It won't be a surprise if Berhalter suffers a similar outcome. And that is exactly how I feel about it. I will say, since we're talking about them exiting the Copa America, I want to place specific blame. They did okay against Uruguay. At times, they did okay. They had moments where you'd like to say if they had a clinical finisher, they score a goal in that situation, right? They had moments, and I like moments because it's something to build from, even though you got to actually build from it. The problem, for sure, the part of the problem stemmed from the referee in that particular game. Berhalter getting the exit is being responsible for the exit is not because of that game. It's not because of this one match. It's what they didn't do against Panama and Bolivia that have me concerned and feel like they need to go a different direction and have a new, fresh face, a new person in the mix. By the way, the new person in the mix could very well be the Jurgen Klopp. The Jurgen Klopp. They also put Pep Guardiola on here, and this article is actually about how that's probably unlikely for financial reasons, which I think is absolute baloney. If Jurgen Klopp is interested, pay him whatever he asks for. He is the perfect type of international coach. He'll be better as an international coach than he was for Liverpool and for Dortmund before that, and for Mainz before that. He is the perfect personality for the type of coach you need to come in, who's strong culture, rock and roll football, as he likes to call it, right? Strong culture, flexible in systems, finds good ways to work around the players he has at his disposal. But what makes Jurgen Klopp really special is the way he builds relationships with players and the way that he works with them on and off the field. I think that's where you're going to see a huge benefit for him. And coming into the 2026 World Cup, where like Alexi Lawless is calling it the most important summer for United States soccer ever. And I kind of agree with that. I get where he's coming from at the very least. And I feel like if you can bring in a good guy like a Jurgen Klopp, I mean, that's a win. That's an absolute win, a massive, massive win. Hey, let me know what you think in the comments. I look forward to chatting with you there. In the meantime, though, make sure that you hit that subscribe button. Don't miss out on all the action of all sports, NFL, NBA, you name it. We're talking all the big sports as the biggest stories are happening before us. Thanks again for joining. Have a good one.